Einen wunderschönen guten Tag.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rail Summit 2021, the future conference of the railways in the European Year of Rail, live from the Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure. The motto is that the German regular interval table meets the synchronized European timetable. My name is Monica Jones. I have the honor to lead you through the program. And first of all, I would like to welcome our host, that is Federal Minister Scheuer. Good morning. The Federal Government Commissioner of the Federal for Rail Transport, Enak Ferlemann. Welcome. Good morning. And all transport ministers that are connected virtually from all of Europe. I am pointing this out because all contributions will be streamed live on the internet and recorded and will be made available for download function later on. And because this is a European conference, there will be several different languages being spoken. And so to make sure we won't lose anybody, this live stream will be provided in English, German, and French. You know probably that the Rail Summit is a special day for rail transport in Germany and for the whole of Europe. Last year, the Deutschlandtakt, the German regular interval timetable, was announced, and now this Deutschlandtakt is going to meet the Europatakt, the synchronized European timetable. And you can already see the logo behind me, TE 2.0, where you can travel during the night across the whole of Europe. There were times where this was normal. I used to do this. And I think everybody will be happy when we revive these connections or make them even better than they used to be. And within the framework of the German EU Council presidency, Minister Scheuer announced this on the occasion of a rail summit and introduced this whole initiative. Federal Minister, we are looking forward to this rail summit, and now we're looking forward to your welcome speech. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, ministers, representatives of the rail companies and associations, ladies and gentlemen, rail travel is climate friendly. Rail travel is modern and it is without borders. Therefore, in the European Year of Rail and at today's summit, the railway is rightly the center of attention. And I would like to welcome you now to the signing of the letter of intent on the Trans-Europe Express 2.0 and at the same time to the 2021 Rail Summit. Directly afterwards, we're going to have this rail summit. During the next few hours will be characterized by this strong mode of transport. There are many questions that are being asked, especially during the pandemic, and these showed us that you can rely on the system, on the rail system. Thanks to rail freight, Europe was supplied with goods throughout the pandemic. Despite the situation, goods were transported via the corridors. It is not conceivable what would have happened if these flows of goods would have interrupted. After such a long time of the pandemic, we now have a proof of how resilient the system is. There will be a time where people will be more mobile, will be traveling more, and where they will be more aware, more conscious of doing this. It will have a different significance, a completely different significance. We will not be as, after years where we were very hectical and after months where this was not possible at all, every journey will become something very special. And how could you travel more consciously than with the railways? One thing is that the journey itself, where you can look out of the window and use the time, and you can also use the time while traveling to rest or to work, to meet other people, other passengers from other regions and countries. On the other hand, when it comes to sustainability, those who would like to travel in an environmentally friendly way should use the railways. Therefore, I would like to convince more people of using the railways when it comes to cross-border transport. Policymakers and companies have to make sure that the offer is right and remains compatible. Germany is the centerpiece of the trans-European transport networks. We have 6 European railway corridors that run through Germany. During our EU presidency last year, we have already set the right impetus for the European railway, and we shortly introduced the Trans-Europe Express strategy. Today, we're going to take one step further. Many EU states have promised to support our strategy for cross-border high-speed and overnight train services. With the letter of intent, we are creating a foundation for a connected and synchronized European timetable. States and railway undertakings provide pledge support in developing links and a regular interval timetable and a digital booking platforms. Also, we ask the EU Commission to propose a funding program for cross-border trains. What makes a TE 2.0 so special? It connects at least 3 states over at least 600 kilometers. It makes at least 160 kilometers per hour on an essential part of the section and has an average speed of 100 kilometers per hour on the whole section. And it gives us more comfort, free Wi-Fi, gastronomy, and sleeping cars and couchettes. And with the TEE 2.0, we can even go faster. We can be more comfortable and more environmentally friendly. We would like to implement this project gradually until the end of the 2020s. With the TEE, you can use an overnight train from Vienna via Munich to Paris, Zurich, and Amsterdam. This will be possible from December 2021 on. In September, we introduced this. The first sections were already available in 2020. There will be further lines available later this year, and from 2023 on, it will be even better, from Vienna and Berlin to Brussels and Paris overnight. And at the end of 2024, there will be overnight trains operating from Zurich to Barcelona. This is why I'm really glad that we will sign this joint letter of intent on the upgrading of the international links from Prague to Dresden and Prague to Vienna. It also contains upgrade plans in our countries. As I already said during the press release, it will be very attractive to only take 2.5 hours to get from one point to the other. We want to use only 4 hours to get from Vienna to Berlin in an express link. This makes these sections unrivaled. So with today's conference on the future of the railways, we continue the good tradition of our railway summit. We have the Rail Transport Master Plan and the Rail Pact, and now we are taking the European Railway a bit further. The TEE 2.0 and the German regular interval timetable activate the synchronized European timetable. So Europe is going to move closer together. This is a nice message, and I'm looking forward to the signing ceremony. Thank you very much.
We are building new railway line to connect 3 Baltic countries to Western Europe.
The railway connection of the 3 European capitals, Brussels, Luxembourg and Strasbourg, under the new Trans-Europe Express strategy will be a milestone and flagship project of international long-distance passenger rail services in Europe.
And one day it will be again possible to board the train in the evening in Riga and step out in Berlin in the morning.
Nur mit einem starken europäischen Bahnangebot, das die Städte und Regionen Europas verbindet, werden wir unsere Klimaziele erreichen.
Norge ønsker at flere av oss reiser på grønne togreiser på tvers av Europa. Derfor så har jeg skrevet under på intensjonsbrevet om Europe Express 2.0.
Je to bezpečné, je to ekologické, je to udržitelná doprava a proto jsem moc rád, že můžeme se dnes přidat k projektu Trans-Europe Express.
Poland support Trans-Europe Express.
Let us make European rail cool again.
Let's make European rail cool again. And I think today we're certainly a step closer to that goal. You might have noticed that in that video we saw a couple of transport ministers from across Europe. And now we have some of them here who are joining us live via video stream, and some have sent an individual message. So let's start with switching over to the Netherlands, one of the main initiators of the old Trans-Europe Express, and today a pioneer of modern rail transport, for example, forming and founding the platform for regulating international passenger transport. So now we're going to welcome the State Secretary for the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, Cynthia van Veldhoven.
Thank you all so much for organising this conference, Mr. Schor, Mr. Verleman. A great pleasure to see you again. And thank you so much for all the good work that you have done for the Trans-Europe Express 2.0. This is really exactly what we need for an attractive EU railway network. The TEE 2.0 encompasses nearly 40 existing and possible new international rail passenger services to build and improve the connections between major European cities. And on a personal note, I'm already looking forward to making an interrail holiday with my families. And I think even if we have to postpone this for a year due to COVID, it will only get better if we look at all the initiatives which are currently underway. I think signing the letter of intent now shows us once more that improving international transport by rail has never been as high on the agenda as it is currently. Of course, the current circumstances are really still extraordinary. We are all fighting COVID-19 and we are taking measures to protect our populations and keep the economy moving. At the same time, we are also fighting climate change and trying to lower our carbon emission. And improving international rail transport is really key to this. As soon as the pandemic is over, we have to be ready to welcome international rail passengers and to give them a better European rail network. And the good news is there's absolutely potential. That is one of the conclusions of the first report of the platform on international rail passenger transport, which I've presented on March 29th during the kickoff of the International Year of Rail. And as you know, the further integrated report is prepared to be sent to the ministers in June 2021. The platform report shows that there really is a potential in developing international rail passenger transport, but concerted action is then really needed on railway capacity, bottlenecks, digitalization, and innovation. And also, I think, putting the experience of the rail passenger first, that really is a key issue in the platform. How do they organize the journey? How do they experience ticket sales? In short, how do we make it attractive for them on a practical basis to choose rail? Thus, after the restart of the COVID-19 crisis, the Green Deal creates an important moment. It is really time to do so. There is a market for international rail passengers for distances up to 500 to 800 kilometers. But getting this organized and running is currently far more expensive than domestic services. So we must act together to make international rail passengers more competitive. And I think TEE 2.0 provides focus and an attractive perspective for a framework. I think step by step, we will improve the EU network. And like the first report of the platform also addresses, this cooperation is not going automatically. More work is still needed on the general conditions with the platform, but also on the cooperation between states on specific connections. I think in general, we have defined the standards, but the implementation and achieving in business benefits, of course, that will take a bit longer. But thank you so much for having taken the initiative for the letter of intent and putting the next generation of the EU passenger network so high on the agenda. We are very, very much open and willing to work with you on the development of an EU network that can connect our citizens by rail. Thank you so much.
Herzlichen Dank. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Veldhoven, and hello to the Netherlands. Now we are going to connect to Copenhagen, to the minister with a cool slogan. Let's say hello to Benny Engelbrecht. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Jones.
Railway cool again in Europe, and we are starting in Denmark, trying to get rid of some of the bottlenecks and especially try to find solutions. Right now, we are actually in the tendering process together with our neighbors in Sweden to establish 2 new night train routes that will be starting in August 2022. They will connect Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and Belgium. That's a good start, but of course the ambition is much higher. There's a lot of things that we need to fix to get even more rail to go through Europe. Of course, apart from the bottlenecks, there is also different technical solutions, different signaling systems, different current requirements on parts of the electrified rails and all of that. But the ambition is exactly the right way and the right approach. And we are so pleased to be a part of this important task. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Andreas Scheuer, for this important initiative today.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Engelbrecht. And hello to Copenhagen. From Copenhagen, we are now going to go to the southeast. We're going to go to Budapest and welcome the Minister for Transport, Laszlo Mosocsi. Welcome.
Dankeschön. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we highly appreciate the process in which the majority of the EU member states plans the network of the international rail services based on the so-called integrated clock face timetable system. Hungary started the introduction of the integrated clock face timetable system approximately 17 years ago, and by now the system is complete both from the networks and from the timetable supply point of view. We are convinced that development of the existing national clock face timetable system into international systems through the cross-border connection of the service is the biggest step forward. Therefore, several years has been a priority for us to create rail services, for instance, between Austria, the Hungarian capital cities, that is Vienna and Budapest, every hour, and between Budapest and the eastern city of Slovakia, Košice, every 2 hours. We also support the reintroduction of overnight rail services in the relation of the biggest cities. In Hungary, this form of transport has been actually maintained, and besides, the purchase of second-hand vehicles was also realized last year. That is, no complete restart has become necessary. When finalizing the system of rail services, we need to take into account the speed of different railway lines and the factor that trains going to or from Budapest are supposed to have at least 7 or 8 hour service time in order to function in a reasonable way. On the long run, we also plan the construction of high-speed railway lines in Hungary. In the framework of the Visegrad Cooperation Group, there is a coordinated activity in order to create high-speed railway connections between the 4 capital cities. The feasibility study about the Hungarian section was completed a few weeks ago, taking into consideration that according to our plan, before high-speed railway line will Slovak-Hungarian border in the vicinity of the Austrian-Slovak-Hungarian border, so this line could be used also by the traffic between Vienna and Budapest. This project contributes to the sustainable and smart mobility strategy of the European Commission, the aim of which to drive the users of high-speed railway lines in the EU. This strategy particularly refers to the Budapest-Bratislava-Vienna section as one of the most important missing links to be realized between East and West. Besides, this high-speed railway line can contribute to the goals of the European Green Deal, since the emission of 400,000 tons of carbon dioxide can be saved yearly through the growing share of railway transport. We warmly welcome the common thinking about the high-speed railway lines on a European level, and we think it is very important that V4 high-speed railway become the network of TEE 2.0. Adding that on the long run, we do not plan Budapest to be the final destination of the network, but it should fulfill the role of a hub towards Romania and its capital city, Bucharest. Negotiations are ongoing about this plan with our Romanian colleagues. Thank you for your kind attention.
Herzlichen Dank, Herr Staatsminister Musocci. Und wir verlassen
Thank you, Minister Musocci. Now we're going to Lithuania, to Vilnius, and we're looking forward to the Lithuanian Minister for Innovation and Technology. Welcome.
Pleasure for Lithuania to be part of your initiative, which we fully support, and especially I myself fully support your aim that you mentioned to increase the unity with this initiative of Europe. And also my compliments to Danish colleague who proposed a very nice slogan for making rail great again. So thank you very much. The main challenge for the Baltic states is to revitalize and significantly increase international rail passenger services. At the moment, we have services between Lithuania and Poland, although we would like to see a truly pan-Baltic passenger train in the near future. In the Baltics, Lithuania is the first to develop the European gauge, since we, as you well known, still have different tracks in the eastern part of Europe and western part, but we already developed it and can enjoy the benefits of the single European railway area. And starting from this year, we will have a new operator which will provide cross-border combined freight transport services between Lithuania and Poland. But of course, we would like to achieve much more. And I'm sure that the Rail Baltica project, which we are currently implementing, will be a game changer in 2026. It's the largest infrastructure project in the Baltic region over the past 100 years. And why we are doing it? For a simple reason. We would like to reach Berlin overnight from Vilnius or any other Baltic capital. So thank you very much for your attention.
Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much, Minister Skordis. We're really much looking forward to it. If we have visitors from Vilnius coming to us here in Berlin, with the train, of course. And now we're coming to two video messages. Greetings from two European capitals, starting with France in Paris, and then we're going to be welcoming there the Minister Delegate to the Minister for Ecological Transition, Monsieur Jean-Baptiste Djebbari.
Andreas, for your invitation. You are right to say that rail is one of the cleanest transport modes, so we have to support it. We must support it not only at a national level, but on a European one. We need to act together to coordinate our investments, to discuss and learn from each other's experiences. Because that's Europe's destiny, and it can make us stronger. We now need to take decisive actions with the new Trans-Europe Express, which France fully supports, but also with the night trains revival, which I must confess, we did not expect to be so popular. But it makes sense because they are climate-friendly, affordable, sustainable alternative to air transport. Myself, I cannot wait to take it to come to Berlin, and there are many other lines to come. In France, for instance, we are relaunching the Paris-Nice next week, and we are very proud of it. But we can do even more to boost new rail services, to facilitate the investment in rolling stock that can operate across borders, to support rail freight operators. And we need financial support at EU level to do so. I'm very glad we signed a call in this regard at the last informal Transport Council. It is further proof, if required, that we are ready to commit together in order to bring change. As you know, France will take over the EU Council presidency in early 2022. And we will keep striving to develop rail transport in Europe. You can count on us to do so. Together we will be taking action. Together we will reach carbon neutrality by 2050. We will not stop travel, we will just learn to travel a bit differently. And rail is part of the solution.
Dank für diese Botschaft aus Frankreich.
Well, thank you for this message from France, Mr. Djebari. Now we're going to listen to another welcome speech from Belgium. We're going to listen to the words by the Belgian Transport Minister, Georges Kilkenny.
I'm pleased to see that in 2021, the EU Year of Rail, the various initiatives to improve and develop international passengers transport are reaching their cruising speed. By signing this letter of intent for the new Trans-Europe Express, I want to support the various projects that will be key to link our European cities day and night. The new Trans-Europe Express is a symbol for connecting Europe and for an affordable and climate-friendly mobility. It's important that both the different operators and the countries concerned work together to remove the legal, technical and operational obstacles to running those trains. And it's also important to devote energy to the interface with the passenger. For anyone who wishes to travel, it must be easy to find all the necessary information to plan their journey in a few minutes and then to book his tickets in the shortest possible times and for the best price. Customer centricity. Finally, I would like to thank Minister Schauer and his team for the energy they have already put into this project. I'm looking forward to meet you in the real life and to be able to travel in all Europe with Trans-Europe Express.
Vielen herzlichen Dank, Minister Kilkenny, und Grüße zurück.
Thank you very much, Mr. Djebari, and thank you. These were the welcome addresses from Europe on the TEE 2.0, which is also very popular in the population, as we just heard. The good message is that the project TEE 2.0 is not a vision, but it is already under implementation, and the name that we gave it is Via Vondobona, the Berlin-Vienna, Prague-Vienna. The line will be implemented. It was already operated and will become more attractive. And this is also a project between the different partners.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we think cross borders, then we will be able to achieve a lot together. And if we look at all the work that went into this before, I must thank the colleagues, ministers, state secretaries for the excellent support that they provided for this project. But in the videos, we could see just how big Europe is. And we need to concentrate on perhaps sections that need to be improved. So there are some considerations that we are talking about in bilateral discussions and of course in broader circles of transport ministers. If I look at what my ministry alone has arranged with other ministries, then it's a very encouraging signal. So we've heard that that rail travel is supposed to become cooler. That's certainly something that I can get on board with. And you've certainly given us a great slogan. If we in Europe when it comes to infrastructure, if we can overcome topographies, then that would also be cool. But we also need to overcome divisions in Europe. If you look to the east of Europe, for example, you can see that a lot of paths need to be upgraded, need to be built and extended. If we look to the Baltic countries, I've had wonderful exchanges with my counterparts about the entire route, talking about building an entire route the whole way through the east of Europe to have a consistent connection. And that would take more than an agreement, but also the actual implementation of planning. And Germany can certainly contribute to that. We've spoken about that in depth. That would give us shorter journey times. And that's what's going to make the rails more competitive again. There are all kinds of areas that we can tweak and that we can and implement improvements, but transport ministers know how hard it is to engage with citizens and to implement infrastructure on the ground. And so that's I can see in the left of me here, I've got the this screen where we've got the entire network. And if I look at the entire network from Tallinn, Riga, Kaunas, Warsaw, all the way down to Zagreb, and then across to Oslo, Copenhagen, Hamburg, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Graz, Zagreb, and then in the center all the way down to Rome, it's beautiful to see, but everyone knows that all participants here, all people from the media, we know how much is yet to be done. Acceptance for railways will require acceptance from citizens, and that is why we're doing a great deal to engage citizens, to talk to citizens. These routes that we've just had presented, we need to begin to tackle them. So we've got the decade of railway, and we need to improve infrastructure. So that's a great message for us all. I'm delighted to have so many colleagues on board today. Yes, exactly. And now the VIO Vinderbona, it's a trilateral agreement, a project that concerns 3 countries in particular. So we're delighted to have greetings from the other 2 transport ministers involved in this project. So just we're going to go through this in geographic terms. We're starting in Berlin, and then next would be Prague. So I'm delighted now to hear the message from the Minister of Transport of the Czech Republic, Mr. Karel Havlicek. The Czech Republic welcomes the German initiative Trans-European Express 2.0. Passenger long-distance transport is an environmentally friendly alternative to flights and to the road, and it's also our priority. The focus of the railways in many European countries has historically been on domestic transport, or at most border passages to neighboring countries. Improving infrastructure will enable us to achieve more attractive journey times. And if we manage to implement direct connections with high-quality vehicles and services, then passengers will be prepared to spend 4 hours for a day trip and up to 7 hours in the train for a several-day trip on a day train. And an important additional offer will be night connections that I believe are an enormous growth potential. I personally would wish that Prague should continue to have connections every 2 hours to the neighboring capitals and to other important transport hubs. Operating this kind of international level of connection is, in terms of economic aspects, only possible with the synergy effects between the needs of domestic transport and the transport needs in neighboring countries. So there's potential for further connections over long distance with a trans-European nature. just as the TEE 2.0 sets out. The connections via Vindobona or Hungaria, which bring Berlin and Prague together with Vienna or Budapest, are a wonderful example. And in a further step, we could have a connection between Prague, Hamburg, Copenhagen, or Prague, Vienna, Venice. They might be further potentials. A whole new impetus for developing connections of this type, TEE 2.0, will come from the construction of a high-speed network in Central Europe. After the construction of high-speed connections, we will then have a massive increase in competitiveness of the long-distance connections. And in this context, we are currently planning an expansion of the range of services and connections on offer. We're going to double that so that every hour we're going to hopefully have a connection to neighboring countries. And so at this point, I would like to thank the Federal Republic of Germany for the cooperation so far in preparing this border tunnel between Dresden and Ustin ad Leben. That has been an epic feat of railways in Central Europe. And this project is a future part of the high-speed axis in Central Europe, known as Via Vindobona. That's a high-speed connection between Berlin, Prague, and Vienna with a journey time of approximately 4 hours in total. So we have pilot sections and new sections with a speed of up to 320 kilometers per hour over a distance of at least 120 kilometers. That will be commissioned by 2030, and then for the remaining 250 kilometers of new paths, they will come in the subsequent years. This new infrastructure will open up whole new possibilities for long-distance connections. Some of the most important connections are the planned express connection Prague, Dresden to Frankfurt. And together with the investment in the German railway system, we will be able to cover that journey in 4.5 hours. And thanks to this, we then have the opportunity to reach a number of travel destinations in Western Europe via train that would otherwise only be possible today by plane or car. The train in the Republic of the Czech Republic is clearly picking up pace, and this is evidenced by the growing number of funds available for expanding infrastructure. The initiative TEE 2.0 is certainly in line with this, and therefore has our fullest support here in the Czech Republic. Thank you very much, Minister Havlicek. Federal Minister. Yes, my colleague in the Czech Republic has proven that our negotiations have been so successful, and he's even spoke to us in the German language and given us. I've just sent him a text message that his entire speech of 5 minutes was in the German language, which is an absolutely incredible achievement. Yes, we have difficulties doing that ourselves. So I can guarantee you, I know myself as someone who's grew up on the borders, that it's not easy to do something like that in a foreign language. So it's wonderful to have partners like that. And hello to my colleague in Prague. Yes, thank you very much. And warmest regards to Prague. We've been speaking about the Via Vindobona, the connection between Berlin, Prague, and Vienna. So I've done my research. Via Vindobona was started in '57 on the Franz Josef connection, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, and of course Austria is also delighted that to be on board in this new connection, and we're looking forward now to hearing the greeting from the Austrian Minister for Climate Protection, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. Here is the Minister from Vienna.
Für Europa haben wir
Well, we have created a real milestone for Europe together. As minister responsible for climate protection of Austria, I'm really glad that with Germany and the Czech Republic, we are building a new high-speed access for rail transport on our continent. This is the Via Vindobona, and it proves that the railway is superior to short-haul flights. Today, it is nearly impossible to imagine that we will be able to travel as fast between Berlin and Vienna with the train as you can between Vienna and Munich or Vienna and Innsbruck. And Prague will be also as closely connected to Vienna as Salzburg. And this is something that we can only achieve together. The train can make sure that Europe will move closely together and in a climate and very friendly way. I would like to thank my German colleagues, Mr. Scheuer and my Czech colleague, Mr. Havlicek, for this excellent cooperation. We prove how it can work because in combating the climate crisis, we need an efficient and cross-border train system. This can only be achieved if we cooperate together with the EU and the neighboring states. The Via Vindobona is a new, incredibly fast, high-speed link between our capitals and an important cornerstone of cooperation. With this new high-speed access from Berlin via Dresden and Prague to Vienna, we will enter a new era for the railway in Central Europe. With a planned journey time from Vienna to Berlin in less than 4 hours, the train will be superior to planes. We will make it possible to shift short-haul flights to the rail mode. In Austria and the Czech Republic will also grow together due to this short journey times. In Austria, we will also upgrade the Nordbahn to become a high-speed link. And in this meaning, I am looking forward very much to a good cooperation for the railway and climate protection. We're heading forwards. Thank you very much to Vienna. And the minister was just talking about a new era for the railway. Yes, this is true. You can also see this in the political constellations. We are talking on a cross-party level in our management for a better railway in Europe. This does not play any role. If we look back, there was once this link between sections, and it shows that the division of Europe and the Iron Curtain, what this did to infrastructure. It damaged the infrastructure a lot. If I have a look at the different services in my election constituency in Passau, nobody takes the car anymore because it takes only 2 hours to go to Vienna from Passau and to Regensburg, Nuremberg, etc. And so you can see there was no Iron Curtain. Sections were upgraded. There are high-speed links. And we have to do this. We still have to do this if you go further east. The division in Europe has led to a lot of restrictions, and the collapse of the Iron Curtain, which is quite long ago now, has to be overcome for real now. And so the initiative, the Via Vindobona, is a very good initiative. I would like to thank the Austrian partners for this initiative. Well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see that there's a lot going on in the railway sector. We are about to conclude the first part of the conference. Minister Scheuer and Parliamentary Secretary Ferlemann will stay with us, and I hope that you will stay on as well. We will continue with the welcome speech of the European Commissioner von der Leyen and the Federal Chancellor Angela Merkel, so stay with us at 11.
Herzlich willkommen zurück zum zweiten Teil.
Welcome back to the second part of the 2021 Rail Summit of the Future Conference on Rail in the European Year of Rail, live from the Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure in Berlin. I would like to welcome the President of the European Commission, Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, and our Federal Chancellor, Dr. Angela Merkel. I am also looking forward to listening again and being able to welcome our host, Andreas Scheuer, Federal Minister of Transport, and the Federal Government Commissioner for Railway, the Parliamentary State Secretary, Inak Ferleman. Both of them are here. And I also welcome the president of the CER, Andreas Matte, who will talk to us later, as well as the representatives of the control group of the Alliance for the Future of Rail, and everybody who are now connected from outside for the second part. All contributions will be streamed live on the internet, and they will be recorded and made available for download later on. The live stream itself is available in German, English, and French. Only last week, the federal government adjusted adjusted their climate protection targets and made them more stricter. And the railway is very important to fit into this pattern. And we are very much looking forward to the welcome speech of Angela Merkel, our Federal Chancellor.
Damen und Herren, das Europäische Jahr der Schiene macht deutlich, der klimafreundlichen Mobilität gehört die Zukunft. Und der heutige Schienengipfel stellt hierzu weitere wichtige Weichen. Um den Schienenverkehr auszubauen und zu modernisieren, stellt die Bundesregierung allein über das Klimaschutzprogramm 2030 5 Milliarden Euro zur Verfügung. Ob bei Personen- oder Güterverkehr, überall treiben wir Elektrifizierung und Digitalisierung voran. Bahnfahren gewinnt auch durch den Deutschlandtakt und die beschlossene Mehrwertsteuersenkung im Fernverkehr an Attraktivität. Auch im internationalen Verkehr ist die Bahn eine willkommene Alternative zum Auto oder Flugzeug. Vereinbarungen zum Ausbau
Agreements on the upgrade of international long-distance train service such as Vienna, Berlin, Prague are also something that show us concerning climate protection. Together with the European transport ministers for the upgrade of high-speed links, European high-speed links and overnight services, we are moving closer to the European unified railway area. Without doubt, the corona pandemic has also damaged the railway undertakings. Their staff members are, however, absolutely hard working to guarantee mobility. I would like to thank you very much at this point. With the support that the federal government introduced, we would like to make sure that we can compensate the damages. But not only this, we would also make sure that the targets of the capacity upgrade of the mobility and digital enhancement, and this in this meaning, I would like to wish the Rail Summit all the success and a great and interesting discussions. And this was the welcome address of Angela Merkel, our Federal Chancellor. Thank you very much. The railway sector is a very important element for the climate strategy, the climate change strategy of the European Union. And we heard it from Minister Scheuer, the European Green Deal is unthinkable without the railway sector. At the same time, the railway sector connects people across borders and also makes an important contribution to the European Union unity. So we are now looking forward to the message of the European Commission, Dr. Ursula von der Leyen.
Minister Scheuer, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren. Vor nun 175 Jahren wurden mit Brüssel und Paris die ersten beiden Hauptstädte der Welt durch eine Eisenbahnstrecke verbunden. Und schon damals leistete die Bahn ihren
And at that time, the rail contributed to a unification across Europe. And I'm delighted that you're hosting such an interesting discussion here today. It is an excellent contribution to the European Year of Rail. We all know how great the effect was on the transport sector in times of the pandemic. The rail sector needs our support in the current crisis, and we have the instruments, we have developed the instruments that it takes. With the Next Generation EU, we have released 750 million euro, and the Commission has also designed subsidy provisions in order to make sure that there is the required flexibility to respond to the crisis. It's very important that the rail sector is supported and comes out stronger from this crisis so that we have a dynamic and competitive rail market. We also need the railways as a sustainable mode of transport more than ever in order to achieve the goals set out in the European Green Deal. And now, with the successes in the vaccination campaign, it's time to discuss how trust in public transport can be reignited. I want our trains to be full once again. Let me just, however, talk about the importance of not only passenger transport but also freight transport for the European Green Deal. We need brave measures and political will so that we can reach our goal of climate neutrality right across Europe by 2050. Our strategy for sustainable and smart mobility provides for a reduction of 90% of transport-related emissions by 2050. In order to achieve this, we need, by 2030, we need to improve services under 50 kilometers in the European Union, and we need to double the number of high-speed connections across Europe by 2030, and we also need to triple by 2050 those connections. Thirdly, we need an increase in rail freight transport of at least 50% by 2030, or to double by 2050. So we have a lot to do. And to achieve these milestones, the Commission will present an action plan this year to promote passenger rail transport over long distances. And in this action plan, we will use European funding options to promote high-speed and long-distance services. So we're going to also see what we can do in the Commission in order to enable overnight rail services. Overnight services have enormous potential to get a lot more people on board our trains. And of course, they're also a sustainable alternative to short-haul flights and to the motorways. So I'm so grateful that our desire to strengthen cross-border rail services is being carried both by the rail sector and from the member states. So we must use this opportunity that we have now, both at national and European levels, to work towards our common goal together. In order to create a unified European rail space, we need to lower barriers, we need to improve interoperability and competitiveness, and we also need an integrated rail network. And the Commission will also produce legislative proposals in that area. But what we will need, of course, is the political will and the necessary funding. And that's why I'm so delighted, if you look at the national recovery plans, that a lot of our member states are making considerable investments in the Next Generation EU program in the rail sector. So that is the right kind of initiative that we need at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, let us, in this European Year of Rail, celebrate Europe's railways. In the Year of Rail, we are going to highlight the numerous advantages of rail travel. We're going to make rail travel more attractive. I want more people traveling by trains. I want more people, more goods transported on rails. And I also want young people to be interested in careers in the rail services. So finally, please allow me, let me mention an exciting and truly European project. And of course, I mean the Connecting Europe Express. This Connecting Europe Express, which will travel right across Europe in September and October, and we see this exciting train as a call for across Europe for better rail services. In this Tour d'Europe, this train will pass through 70 stations in various member states, and it will do so to celebrate our railways. There will be events along the way where we can discuss what is necessary in order to get more people on board and to get more people to engage with rail transport and a lot more. On the 30th of September, the train will then arrive in Berlin, and perhaps a few of you here today will also join us then to discuss how European rail transport can be brought into the future. So I would ask you, I would plead, welcome the European Express, Connecting Express, and for today, thank you for your attention. I wish you an exciting and constructive conference today. That was the greeting from the European Commission President, Dr. Ursula von der Leyen. And of course, what I will take home from this is that Europe is behind the rail sector and is focusing on the rail sector. With the summit here today, the role of Germany as a transit country and as a European hub is clearer than ever. After 4 years of new railway policy, perhaps it's time to look back, and I will pass the floor to Federal Minister Scheuer.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was a great introduction with the Federal Chancellor and the President of the Commission. Well, thank you very much for these messages that you send us. They give us a lot of courage and they motivate us. And they give us also the necessary support for major projects when it comes to the railway system and railway policy in all of Europe. The conference is consisting of several parts, and I would like to thank all the participants in advance. Especially, I would like to thank my Parliamentary State Secretary, Mr. Ferlemann, and the different railway companies and associations. They show what we have to set as a political framework. I would like to say a few words on rail transport that connects people and strengthens cohesion, that inspires and fascinates us, and that sets on digital innovation and modern technologies, and that makes everybody win. That is passengers, railway undertakings and their staff members, logistics and the economic sector, and especially climate and the environment. And I like traveling by railway, not only because people are traveling with us, but because there are so many staff members that work on the sector in passenger transport and freight transport. I would like to mention people who make sure that we are safe on the station platforms when we are traveling, that make sure that hygiene measures are met, that wear masks, that make sure that the system, the rail system and the railway undertakings are motivated, also with a lot of new staff members with very interesting professions. And we have tasks that we would like to fulfill, whether that is the German Climate Change Act or the European Green Deal. Both can only work with a strong rail system. We have achieved a lot. I'd like to say a bit more about that later, but we have to increase our efforts, because this is the only way how we can meet the climate change targets. And for this, we have to set clear, the right framework. And this is why last Wednesday, I gave a statement on the new Climate Change Act on how we can achieve the climate change targets in the transport sector and how we can actually improve them. In the railway sector, this means that we need considerable investment in infrastructure, The Federal Chancellor already mentioned this. We need a faster upgrade of the local public transport network and also a comprehensive offer for a job ticket to motivate more people to shift to buses and trains. In regional transport, we have to make sure that people have confidence, and use these transport means after the pandemic. The 2020s are to become the decade of the railways, as the Federal Chancellor already made quite clear in her welcome address. This is very important, and I'm really grateful that she has been supporting this new railway policy from the very beginning on. There are several measures that we were able to set with a lot of commitment and money and ideas and a lot of support. The signals for for further improvement are good. As a basis of our work in the Federal Ministry of Transport, we have the most railway-friendliest coalition treaty there ever was. After that followed the Alliance for the Future of Rail, where all the key players in the rail sector were involved. In this context, the Rail Transport Master Plan and the Rail Pact were developed and concluded last year. It is a unique consensus that took place here, and I would like to thank everybody that was involved actively and made constructive contributions to this. And I would also like to thank my State Secretary, Inak Ferleman. You all know the targets for this decade. Until 2030, we would like to double the number of passengers in passenger transport. At the same time, we would like to increase the share of rail freight in rail transport to at least 25%. For this, we need a reliable infrastructure and more comfort, and make rail more attractive. Our Danish colleague said before that traveling by rail has to be cool again. And for this, we need three things: investment, modernization, and the digital transformation. And we also need a well-coordinated timetable for the whole of Germany. That is our Deutschlandtakt, our German regular interval timetable. This is the biggest innovation for rail transport ever since the railway reform of 1994. Under the motto, more frequently, faster, everywhere, changing trains will become more easier, and journey times will become shorter. We can already see this on the line from Hamburg to Berlin. So the trains there have been operating in half-hourly since December 2020. The Deutschland timetable has also advantages for freight traffic. On one hand, it profits from a targeted upgrade of the infrastructure. And on the other hand, this timetable makes more train paths available for freight trains and makes them make sure they can be used reliably. We will supplement this timetable on further lines. In December, we will electrify the Südbahn between Ulm, Friedrichshafen, and Lindau, and after that we will continue with Swabia and the Lake Constance. In Lake Constance, Lindau, you can also get a connection to Austria then, and Switzerland. And the Deutschlandtakt, the regular interval timetable, will be integrated into the Europatakt, the synchronized European timetable. We are supported by our European partners and by the European railway undertakings. No matter whether you plan to travel from Paris to Berlin, via Berlin to Warsaw or Barcelona, via Strasbourg to Berlin, it should be fast, directly, and without changing trains. And the key for that is the Trans-Europe Express TEU 2.0. And that we were able to sign this letter of intent today gives additional impetus to this idea. And now we need to get active and implement this idea. A focus for the European Year of Rail is there for us cross-border services. We would like to better synchronize and integrate the existing services. Whether the Deutschlandtakt or Europatakt, the most important thing for this is an efficient and modern infrastructure. To make sure that that this works, infrastructure has to be upgraded faster. And for this, we have set several acceleration acts on track. For example, the simplified procedures. We have, for example, also the act on accelerating investment. For this, with this, you don't need any approval anymore for like a plan approval procedure. And this also affects electrifying railway lines, noise protection, and the reconstruction of platforms. But what is even most important is that we invest at record level. This is the only way how we can strengthen the rail system, how we can create attractive services. And as I said already, we invest on a record level. 86 billion euros will be available until the end of 2029 for the maintenance and modernization of the existing network. There will be 11 billion euros of additional federal funds for the climate protection program of 2030. 1 billion euros can be accessed annually from the communities for railway projects, and from 2025 on it will be 2 billion euros and it will increase from 2026 on dynamically every year. At the same time, we are consistently increasing investment in railway lines. It will be the first time that more money will be spent on the railways than on roads. This is active climate protection. This also means that we invest and modernize. And without the support of the parliament, this would not have been possible. This is why I would like to thank the members of the parliament, of the parliamentary group that provide the funds so we can implement this railway policy successfully. With these decisions, we shape future. These, when we think about the Railway Regulatory Act, it is usually there's not so many reporting on that on the news, but because it's well done and it's a decisive project to set the necessary framework to get forward and to increase competition. With these funds, we shape the future. We build tracks, modernize structures, electrify sections. We fund new sidings, make stations more attractive. We meet the conditions of the coalition treaty, especially when it comes to making the stations more attractive, which means we take more money to invest into stations than we decided in our coalition treaty. And we press ahead with the digital transformation of the railway sector. In this context, for example, we introduced digital signal boxes and ETCS. And just with this digital support alone, we can create an additional capacity of up to 20% in passenger and freight transport. But this is not all. The digital railway has even more positive effects. More reliability and more punctual trains, higher energy efficiency and less CO2 emissions, lower operating costs and less personal staff costs, new professions and viable working spaces, and a rail transport without borders with systems that are compatible with each other. The first digitalized train node in Germany will exist in the metropolitan region of Stuttgart until 2025. There will be more. We will have an investment of more than 462 million euros to make sure that long-distance, regional, and rapid transit trains can be operated with most modern digital technology. And only with the best technology can we implement this. However, infrastructure is the condition to make sure that we can travel better. Freight transport is to become more digital and more efficient. And this is what the European transport ministers support in their Berlin Declaration on Innovative Rail Transport. During the Council presidency, we initiated this on our rail summit in September. Another driver of innovation is the digital automatic coupling, DAC, and with it, the smart train will become a reality. It will be a train where we have continuous data lines that provide information about brakes, the order of the wagons, the temperature in the wagons, and technical problems. This is what future looks like. And I'm glad that we get so much support by the different railway undertakings and the member states to retrofit wagons to the DAC, because this is requires a lot of efforts. For this, we need a pan-European approach, because we have to make sure that freight wagons of different types and different origins can be coupled with each other. At the moment, we are examining the efficiency of DAC for practical applications with the DAC demonstrator train. And the results, the findings will show us what kind of construction type has to be used in the future. When concerning the future of rail transport program, we also deal with innovative approaches. It starts in May 2020, and until 2024, we can fund tests, trialing operations, and the introduction into the market of new technologies with 30 million euros per year. We also support trialing of automated locomotives that have the possibility of automatic detection of damages to the freight wagons, and of using artificial intelligence to shape work cycles in a more effective way. The target is clear. We want to make freight traffic more innovative and more competitive. The system behind freight transport has to become more effective and more intelligent. With the Rail Transport Master Plan, we have created a compass that provides different measures. One of these measures is reducing track access charges. Since 2018, we have been investing funds of the federal government for this. In this year and next year, it will be 350 million euros, with which we reduce the burden of the railway undertakings. And this might even continue. To implement all our plans, one condition has to be met. We have to involve and convince people. For this, we need more comfort and customer friendliness when it comes to traveling with the railways. On the other hand, despite the increase in the transport sector, we have to make sure that the tracks become quieter, because many residents are worried that it might become louder, and they expect a lot from noise protection measures. This is why we do everything we can to reduce the number of residents affected by noise from the railway system. We would like to reduce the burden that is placed on residents created by this noise. We would like to use the topography on the ground. We have provided a model track for this, but of course we would like to have the maximum or the best track possible, the best train path possible, also for the residents. And we are also responsible to maintain the beauty of our home country. If I want to shift more goods from road to rail, I need a good infrastructure for this. All our plans have to be implemented in cooperation with the people. And for this purpose, we have created quite a few initiatives. We do everything to reduce the number of residents affected by noise from freight or from railway by 2030. The train or railways should be a good and silent neighbor. For this, we are already doing everything we can to provide more noise protection. Lines are being renovated, noise protection walls are being built, freight wagons are being equipped with silent brakes, new windows are built. And if you take the human hearing sensation as a reference, then the noise from railway operations in Germany has dropped by 50% during the last 20 years. This is a great success, and we are continuing there with our double strategy. This means we continue renovating affected sections, and we make the rolling stock, traction units, and wagons even more silent. And for this, we need technological progress and innovative developments. So you can see that, like no other federal government before, we promote the railway mode, even in these difficult times. It is important that the railway sector will emerge from the pandemic relatively unscathed. And this is why we support it. An example would be the local public transport. It is one of the mobility guarantees during the pandemic. Despite rapidly dropping passenger numbers, it continued operating. The revenue losses are considerable. For 2020 and 2021, the sector expects to have financial losses of 7 billion euros. To buffer or mitigate the damage, we support the sector and increase the subsidies, the state subsidies for local and regional passenger rail services by 1 billion euro. 1 billion euros. Together with additional funds from last year, the federal government has provided 3.5 billion euros for this. And with this, we will also, after the pandemic, we will also have an efficient and reliable local public transport on the railway, and that we can use also after the pandemic. We should not lose any operators, any transport operators due to the pandemic, because we need to achieve our targets for a better climate, because rail travel is active climate protection and should remain attractive among people. And this is why I would want that we emerge from this crisis stronger than we got into it. I know the way until there is very hard and the challenges are immense, but the railway sector has the best conditions to tackle them. There are many smart and future-oriented people involved, and they are thriving for innovation. After the pandemic, we have to focus more on investment into infrastructure, and in this context, I would like to tell you that we at the Federal Ministry of Transport, we do climate protection every day. We work for passenger transport and freight transport, and we want to strengthen the system, to evolve the system. And together with the railway sector, with the railway mode, with the railway undertakings, with the partners in Europe, we would like to have a good and efficient and highly innovative and digital rail transport in Germany and across beyond Germany. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Federal Minister Scheuer. And I think it became quite apparent that railway policy is nothing abstract. This kind of policy is lived, experienced, and shaped. We will now move to the role of the players in European rail transport. And for this, we are going to listening to a speech by the president of the CER. He's also the CEO of the ÖBB Holding, and we're looking forward to listening to Andreas Matte.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Vienna and the main train station, and thank you for the invitation. Today I'm not speaking as CEO of the Austrian Federal Railways, but rather as my role as president of the European Community of railway companies. The 70 members account for 71% of the rail network in Europe, 76% of freight and 92% of passenger transport in Europe. The Transport Summit is taking place at a very difficult time for the entire railway system. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the European rails and railway companies ensured mobility of passengers and of freight, but at the same time, they were enormous amounts of impact on the railway system, and since the beginning of the crisis, the sector accrued losses of 26 billion euro. So there's of course it's wonderful that the EU has taken measures since the start of the pandemic. For example, the ability to make use of waivers on infrastructure charges, and of course the recovery plan for us is very important in terms of mobility and sustainability. And the plan focuses on the rails. Measures such as the Green Pass are also helping improve the situation drastically, and the sector will work constructively on this project. In terms of subsidies, I think there's need for further action. The limited time frame for state subsidies to support the economy is not adequate as a response to the challenges and needs of the railway sector at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, but particularly in this very difficult context, we must also turn our attention to long-term questions of the future. The Year of the Rail this year provides us, however, with an excellent platform. I am convinced that the further development of trans-European rail provides the key to climate-friendly mobility across Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, without a shift from road and flight to the rails, we will never achieve our goals. We've got an enormous amount to do. And of course, the rail companies need to do their homework. We need to roll our sleeves up. We need to become faster. We need to become more modern and more customer-oriented. In particular, infrastructure operators are going to have to work together internationally and across borders in future. We must overcome differences in operative rules and technology across various countries in order to break down barriers. What we need is a common operative language, like an Esperanto for international railway signaling across the main European routes. ETCS, for example, will be very important in this regard, and we need to harmonize the signaling across the main routes. Rail companies currently need, more than ever, the commitment from politicians and political will. Ladies and gentlemen, we need a better rail infrastructure and a better usage of our capacities in order to increase capacity and quality of Europe's rails, both for passenger transport as well as for freight transport. Currently, the review of the TEN-T network is underway. From the point of view of our perspective, it's one of the most important legislative initiatives in the current Parliament. The TEN-T network must be designed in such a way that we can offer high-speed services between the main hubs and transport hubs of the EU. Rail services to ports and to airports must be prioritized. Investment in infrastructure are the best way in order to ensure in future more high-speed services day and night. And rail is after all, the climate-friendly alternative to flights and to the motorway, and that'll help us achieve our climate goals. Also, allocating rail capacities must be better regulated. The TETR project, for example, looks at the needs of both freight and passenger service operators, and is a helpful project for increasing existing capacities. Of course, we're not here today to talk about freight in particular, but I must say that it's very important that the same applies here when it comes to overnight services. Without moving transport to the rails, then we won't reach our climate goals. And a requirement for this shift for freight is use of true cost pricing between the various modes of transport. We have particular advantages on the rails, and we need to communicate them. We need more Europe for our railway system. We need to invest in modern vehicles. That is essential if we want to be able to offer the highest standard in services. And of course we do, and that's something we're going to have to do if we want to be successful in future. So investments in research and innovation are going to help us in order to offer better services and greater infrastructure capacities in future without having to build new paths all across Europe. The use of the European Rail Traffic Management System, ERTS, is very important and certainly deserves a more brave and better coordinated approach from all stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, I am well aware that politicians are certainly currently bombarded with all kinds of pleas and demands. However, I believe that now is the time in order to voice our demands as clearly as we can. I am certainly convinced that only if we make our rails quickly, more attractive, faster and more digital will we be able to attract new customers in passenger and rail transport. And only if we achieve that will we succeed in shifting passenger and freight transport to the rail in order to achieve Europe's climate goals. The question of an efficient distribution of means, of course, is a difficult balancing act, but it is the right balance must be struck. For European politics, I believe that the European Green Deal must give considerable impetus to our railway system right across Europe. We need well-coordinated use of all financing and funding options from the CEF or from the recovery funds or from the cohesion fund. That will be essential for success in this complex matter. And that will be a major contribution to bringing European states closer together and living out the European values. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commission is giving positive signals in both short-term and long-term projects. For example, the action plan on cross-border passenger transport is being keenly awaited by the rail sector. And in the long term, the high-speed services will be doubled by 2030 across Europe. And by 2030, multimodal passenger transport will be simplified by electronic ticketing, and freight transport will become paper-free. By 2050, all external costs in the transport sector shall be taken into account. And as a final point, which is absolutely crucial for me, we need a level playing field between the modes of transport. I think they are so important because only that way we'll be able to ensure that the railways are able to fully exploit the advantages that they offer over the competition. Advantages regarding service, reliability, the safety and sustainability. And only if all external costs are included in price calculations will we see a change in customers' preferences. Only that way we'll be able to see the success of low-carbon forms of mobility, VAT exemptions for cross-border services, for example, will make our services a lot more attractive. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that despite the very difficult financial situation we find ourselves in, we are in a good position because Europe needs more railways. But the trains and railways also need more Europe. So to conclude, our railways must, despite the difficult financial situation, need to invest so that we can make the most of future potentials. Our railways must become faster, more digital, more attractive. The Green Deal must give massive impetus to our railways, and we need clear commitment to decarbonisation of the transport sector, particularly during the year of rail, but afterwards as well. The European railway systems are certainly willing to play their part and to contribute for a climate-friendly future. A lot of these topics have been brought up in the letter of intent, and that provides an important framework for our debate. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a successful event today, and I thank you kindly for listening. And Servus from Vienna. Yes, thank you very much, President of the CE arm, Andreas Mattei. 4 years of new railway policy, ladies and gentlemen, from the rail master plan all the way to the future of the rail system. This has involved interregional work and a European perspective, and that at times of the greatest crisis that humanity has experienced in a century. Our next speaker has worked actively on this new rail policy and is still doing, and I'm delighted to welcome here in the studio the Federal Commissioner for Rail Services, Parliamentary State Secretary Enik Fenneman.
Sehr geehrter Bundesminister, meine sehr verehrten Damen und
Federal Minister, Madam Commissioner, Federal Chancellor, Mr. Mattei, ladies and gentlemen, who would have believed 4 years ago that railway transport would be the focus of transport policy in general? When the coalition treaty was concluded, there was quite an ambitious task that we got. We wanted to develop a future alliance, and this was to develop into a railway pact, and this was to result in a railway policy. We developed the future alliance of rail transport, and many of us worked together on this future alliance in many discussions, some of them critical, some less critical, but we always shared one objective, and we had very good results that finally resulted in the master plan, a plan that comprehensively includes or newly defines rail policy. What do we expect from the system? What is it to do for the future? How will it be funded? How will it be shaped? How will it be organized? All these questions played a very important role, and were bundled in very important aspects for the master plan, and everybody pledged to implement these results. This is the rail pact that we were able to conclude last year. In an impressive way, the whole sector did not think about their own interests, but brought this whole progress forward together to make a policy together for the rail sector. And this worked out really well. And how the discussions of the last few months showed, railway policy is becoming ever more the focus of our policy, also because of the climate crisis. How are we to tackle the climate crisis in Germany and in Europe if we do not upgrade the railway transport, if we want to reduce individual motor transport and aviation? We can only do this with rail transport, with local passenger services, but also with rail freight services. Because if we want to shift more goods from the road to rail, we need more rail. If we want to double the passenger numbers, then we need more infrastructure. We need more rolling stock. We need better stations. We need to rethink everything and make it better. And we set the cornerstone for this in the policy. There has never been a federal government that has made railway policy their center of attention in such a way. Never have been so many funds been made available for railway policy. The federal minister already said that it will be the first time that more funds will be provided for the railway than for roads. But in order to implement this, there's a lot we have to do. Among other things, we need to rethink infrastructure. We have to renew infrastructure, because if in freight traffic we want to increase the share from 18 to 19%, 18 or 19% to 25%, well, this is actually a 70% increase, then we have to do so much more. And if we want to double the passenger numbers of local and regional transport services, we need better infrastructure, better stations, better trains. We need so many more measures and for the digital transformation. We need new signal and new control and signaling technology measures. There are so many different measures that we have to implement that are important to upgrade the capacity of the network. But there are quite a few measures that need to be tackled, such as the Fehmarn Fixed Belt, the Rheintalbahn, and several other projects. We have also talked about the Erzgebirge base tunnel. But to realize these projects, we need the cooperation of our fellow citizens. And sometimes the citizens have not understood that mobility is changing. Many times those that give speeches in the parliament for the railway sectors have to talk to the associations on the ground that are against it. If we want to make transport policy, railway policies, we have to create this railway infrastructure. Then there has to be the readiness to somehow get these routes through the country, because without this infrastructure, we won't be successful in upgrading it. And everybody has to make their contributions, not only those who provide funds, but also those that accept that there will be a new line going through their city or around the city. And this is why I would like to ask you to make a move. If we want to organize climate-friendly mobility, we need more readiness, more commitment, and the willingness to build these lines through Germany. Climate protection is characterized this year by the European Year of Rail. We wanted it to be like this year. The reason for this is that we say that the railway mode is the transport mode of the 21st century. And what would be more promising than making 2021 the European Year of Rail to show that the railway sector is the transport mode for the 21st century. And this is why it was important that the Commission and the Chancellor sent a welcome speech showing that they also support this policy, this railway policy, and that our topic in Germany to organize a reliable services in the form of regular interval timetables that make trains more punctual, that make it more possible to change trains. This Deutschlandtakt, this German regular interval timetable, has been further evolved to make sure we now have a synchronized European timetable. To connect all the different services across Europe. And this is good and right that we did so. And this is why we now have the message that 22 countries have found each other to bring this aspect further, to newly initiate this project of European policy. And this is a great perspective. If you can board the train in Stockholm at night and get off the train and the next morning in Cologne, for example, from Zurich to Barcelona. And this makes traveling with the rail so much more attractive. We do not have to go to travel to our vacation home via car. We can just take the train. There are so many different companies in Germany that will compete with each other and therefore become better, give each other incentives to compete for better trains, better infrastructure, better to make the stay for the passengers even better. And for this, we need the digital transformation that will bring 10 to 20% more capacity, that will make things easier. We need a platform where you can book tickets, such as if you want to fly from Berlin to Lisbon, for example, with one ticket, this is something that we also want to achieve for rail travel. This is why it is so important to use this European Year of Rail, so we can advance, so we can develop this transport sector in a way that we want to make it more ecological, faster, more reliable, and everywhere. I am really glad that you join us. I'm glad that we have so many supporters, not only in Germany, but also in the whole of Europe. And this is why this is a day of celebration for the railway sector and for me, because I can see that the work of the last few years was actually successful and is bearing fruits now actually across Europe. Let us continue to work on this to continue to the success of the railway mode. I'm looking forward to the panel discussions after that. Well, thank you very much, State Secretary Ferlemann. You already said it. In 5 minutes, we will welcome a high-level panel with representatives of the industry who will tell us how their companies will fill the Deutschlandpakt or Europapakt with life. We will just have a short break, but please don't leave us. We will continue at 12 o'clock.
Achtung, in 5, 4, 3, 2, bitte.
Welcome back to the third part of our Rail Summit 2021, the conference in the European Year of Rail. From here, the Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure. As you can see behind me, we've had a little redecoration here, and we've got a few more guests. Yes, of course, we are here in the corona pandemic. This is a virtual conference, therefore, that you can follow in the live stream in English, French, and German. But I can assure you that all of the participants here in person have been tested and all, of course, negative. And, of course, are therefore also keeping the adhering to the distance regulations. So regular interval services for Europe, challenges and opportunities for rail transport after the corona pandemic. That's our title today. So I'm going to introduce everyone from in the round today. I'd like to welcome Member of the Management Board for Infrastructure at Deutsche Bahn AG, Ronald Pofferle. And then on the other side, from the Chairman of the Rail Alliance, Deputy Chairman of the Railway and Transport Union, then Dr. Tobias Heinemann, President of MoFair, the Stakeholder Association. He's Managing Director of Transdev GmbH as well. And then we have the President of the German Railway Industry Association and CEO of Siemens Rail Infrastructure and Mr. André Rodebank. And we have Susan Henkel, President of the Federal Association of the Local and Regional Passenger Rail Authorities, Mr. Ingo Wortmann, President of the Association of German Transport Companies and the Münchner Verkehrsgesellschaft as well. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure you've seen this, that the Deutschlandtakt is to be expanded into the synchronized European timetabling so that we have cross-border and environmentally friendly transport, as we heard from the Latvian Minister for Transport, to board in Riga and to get out of the train in Berlin in the morning after a good night's sleep. Is that possible? So my question for the first round is, do we want that? Can we achieve that? Can we do that? Is that what we want? I know that the Deutsche Bahn, Mr. Pofferle, has a lot of plans, for example, in the area of Eurolink. I know you've got a few things in the pipeline. Perhaps you could tell us what you're planning. Well, the requirements are that we have the corresponding infrastructure, the right infrastructure, and the Minister and Henrik Ferlemann also pointed that out just now. And in the planning for TEE 2.0, a lot of different companies for infrastructure discussed, well, how should I put it, that we have a vision for our scheduling that with the right infrastructure in place, so that across Europe we have a Eurolink concept. So we're trying to develop that now. We're still in the early days. The initiative was essential because no national state in Europe can achieve this on its own. Germany, of course, is a transit country in terms of rail transport, and without our European partners, it wouldn't be possible to implement a concept like this. Yes, and the question is, do we want to implement this? I don't know if you followed the press conference. We had a representative for the Federal Ministry of Transport that some trains are rolled out and then only operate for a couple of years because they're not economical. Is it economically viable? Yes, well, the companies are going to have to decide that themselves. Companies who offer these kinds of services. For Deutsche Bahn, I would say we believe that overnight train journeys are not necessarily economic, considering the investment needed. But we have found cooperation partners who themselves are convinced that they can design things in an economically viable way. So yes, in future we'll be working with partnerships that will enable certain services to be offered. And if there are partners out there, if companies that want to offer that, then that's great. We think, however, that this initiative is right, and we support it. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Poffel and Mr. Burkert. There's a lot going on in railway transport. That's, of course, a great thing, and certainly I'm sure Allianz Pro Schiene, the Pro Rail Alliance, would agree. Again, in the press conference, we heard that the Pro Rail Alliance is not a fan of synchronized European timetabling, that we need to get the German equivalent up and running. Yes, it's very ambitious. We've heard some very exciting speeches, and over the last Parliament, I think a lot has been achieved in order to achieve improvements. But there's an enormous amount of work to done to catch up, to make sure that our infrastructure is upgraded. Yes, these ideas are marvelous of the synchronized European timetabling, but Germany has 57 border crossings and only 27 are electrified. So electrification is very important. Germany is very ambitious. 70% should be passable. We need by the next parliament we want that figure to be 75. So we need to be more ambitious going forward. I'm glad that we're seeing the recognition for the importance of overnight trains. There's been petitions and signatures in favour for overnight trains, but I think Europeans going to have to come together. We need to overcome borders and reduce barriers right across Europe. We need to make sure we get the fundamental basis in place with the system in Germany alone. So if we have so many future-oriented projects set up, what does that mean for the staff in Deutsche Bahn? Yes, the minister spoke about modern jobs, a job machine, job creation. There are a lot of young people who do want to work in the railways, and it's certainly an attractive sector. But I would just say that in local transport, that we're seeing a lot of fast turnover in HR. We need good collective bargaining agreements. We need a good framework for employment, and that's certainly something that could be improved at the moment. But I think, yes, in our alliance, we've seen that Deutsche Bahn is certainly remaining attractive for young people, and also pilots who currently are not able to fly are becoming train drivers at the moment. What an interesting development. Mr. Rodenberg, you represent the association that provides the technology, what we see on the rails and around the rails. When it comes to technology, are we where we need to be for TEE 2.0? Yes, we're in a good position, but we've got a lot to do. If you look where we are in Germany and the technology that we're working with, then it was certainly a major challenge that we've all seen. I think we've heard that in the speeches today. I think it's very important, however, that we have the ambition, the vision and support that all want to do all they can in order to move forward. We need planning security. We need to know what to expect and where we're going. But the technology is certainly there. We've heard about trains, booking platforms, electronic platforms, digitalization. They're the major challenges that we're going to have to tackle together. But you can see what successes it brings. For example, with the Berlin-Munich route, how the acceptance for that, people who would normally fly across that route, or Madrid-Barcelona, where over 60% of people are now doing that route by a train. Of course, we're comparing to figures before Corona. But these new technologies mean that the railways are becoming more attractive, both for operators, for freight operators, but also for passengers. And if we manage to do that, then this will all become a great success, as we all wish. So a stupid question from me with regard to the discussion that we're going to have this afternoon on research. The technology is there, but we need to know what are the actual concrete plans, what are the next steps. Does that mean that technology needs to respond or only begins to develop when politics provides the necessary framework? Or is technology sometimes proactive and say, we've got some new wonderful innovation and we can implement something entirely new? Yes, we're constantly putting forward what we've developed. And recently, I've seen what we can achieve together. We signed an MOU between rail associations, Deutsche Bahn, and the ministries were involved, and they said they want to bring something together, bring forward together. And they said 2040 is not ambitious enough, and we have to move towards goal of 2030. And our staff are all on board for these more ambitious projects. Also, I think that calls for tender need to be more modernized, and they need to be cleverer. We shouldn't just be always going for the cheapest offer, but what is going to bring us forward.
So Initiativen ergreifen, auch
take up initiatives. That is something we want to talk about. Mr. Heidemann, as far as I know, your overnight train from Stockholm via Copenhagen to Berlin will start. Is this already part of the TE 2.0, or is this a parallel project? Well, it is part of the initiative that we believe in overnight trains, and our sister company also had a lot of commitment, and we will revive this overnight train service. But I think I would like to come back to what Mr. Pofalla said. I think you said something very important. We need to have access to the trains. I think one of the access hurdles that we have, what is also a problem for investing, especially here in Germany, is that the infrastructure, the rail infrastructure, is financed in a very different way across Europe. In some countries, track access charges have to be paid, and in some others not. In Germany, before the pandemic, there was a different principle. So a train going from A to B has to pay €6 of track access charges per meter, and then you're not surprised to see that going by train is more expensive than going by road, because you don't have to use road access charges, but track access charges. And these are the access hurdles that we have that have to be abolished in Germany and across Europe. And then we can conceive everything from a European perspective, and then trains can operate without any borders. And I think then we can achieve what we intended to, what we planned to. But this has to happen now. So the facts have to be created after this very positive morning. So if the EU Commissioner von der Leyen mentions an integrated European railway, she is not only talking about technology, but also price development. At least we have to think, conceive the railway pricing system from a European perspective. And I'm sure that you have to abolish track access charges across Europe to be successful in this context, to manage the climate change. Ms. Henkel, the local public transport, regional transport, what role does the Europatag, the synchronized European timetable, play in this context? Well, it plays a major role because we have cooperation with cross-border transport and cross-border our European neighbors that we work together. For example, France, we have had joint tender processes or cooperation with the Polish and Czech colleagues, with Swiss colleagues, and Denmark and Austria. This experience has to be used because we managed a lot together. We heard this before. We did not only develop, we do not only have different track systems, but also different signaling and electricity systems. And if we want to make innovation together, we have to coordinate well, but we also have to develop shared or joint tender processes in the rail system. in addition to the technical enthusiasm that these systems can create also with me, I'm also thinking of the people. We have to create a uniform access to the system. We have to make it easy for passengers to gain access to a through ticket in Europe. Not only think in small scales, but think bigger and have digital and analog offers to get tickets, for example. We have to include these ideas, and we have to think about approaches how we can do this across Europe. You need to have a timetable available that you can take with you. I would like to mention a research project that we have with Poland, just to make sure that we can go from Poland to Berlin and provide all the offers in Polish on the app. These are the small matters, the small topics that the digital transformation also brings with it, and to make this accessible for the people is also very important. But I can also imagine that the Europatag, the synchronized European timetable, can achieve that you get from one point to another, which is an advantage that is superior to flying, because you have to get to the airport first, because many times the airports are outside of a city. But if this should also, such a synchronized European timetable should also be coordinated with local and regional transport. Is this working? Yes, you're right. This is definitely what we are doing with the railways. You can get into the heart of the cities. You can manage the last mile. You do not want to buy a bus ticket. You just want to get on a bus, change trains, change from bus to train without buying a new ticket. And we have to think about this. Then the system works and it's comfortable. So it was said before, why did these systems not work? We have to learn from this experience and get better. This is our motto. Okay, I will look at Mr. Wortmann. He is responsible for the Münchner Verkehrsgesellschaft. There is a very good connection between the local public transport and the Munich airport. I would like to know what you can say us about the experience made with freight transport. Is the European synchronized timetable here rather an opportunity or a challenge? With the freight transport, we do not only have to transport passengers through Europe and be fast in this, but we also have to guarantee a fast transport of goods. For this, you need regular interval timetables. But if you segregate traffic flows, this will be more successful. You we need new train paths. Is this something that we have to do, or is it already being done? It's actually mostly done at the moment, but it's also something that we need to do in the future and where we need to continue. If you have a look at different lines, there are some conflicts about the train paths. And it is important that some tracks can be reopened, tracks that were not used in between. I would like to look at Mr. Pofalla, infrastructure. This is your topic. Can we help Mr. Wortmann here? Yes, we are planning additional freight transport train paths in many places, but we do not have to be hesitant about this. In many places, we have citizens protesting. The citizens use their legal rights to protest, and this is of course correct. And this is why I'm grateful to the federal government and the federal parliament that we had this planning, that there were several planning acceleration initiatives. And I can tell you that the planning periods will be reduced by at least 20%. This is absolutely necessary. We could invest billions of euros, for example, with the Betuwe line or the Brenner access lines in Bavaria. We can talk about very important freight transport projects. We need to accelerate the planning because this transport shift will not be workable. But now the conditions are made, but you have to know that this is a tough battle when it comes to implementing these infrastructure measures. And this all costs money. And this gets me to the second big topic, which is we are still right in the middle of the pandemic. The pandemic has hit the railway sector very hard. There have been many revenue losses for many passengers. As the train still used or transported many passengers and goods from one place to another. Maybe we can hear from you what you experienced and how you look into the future. Can we learn something from this situation? I would like to start with you, Mr. Wortmann, because in your function, you have a lot of topics that you coordinate. You hear a lot from staff members and colleagues from industry. What would you say was what you learned from the last 14 months? What was a key moment that showed how resilient or also how fragile the railway system is? Yes, of course, there was this moment. This was quite at the beginning of the pandemic, where we decided that we continue working or operating with the same offer or with the same services and only reduce by 20%. And I talked about this with my colleagues. We decided that it was right because those that have to use transport are able to do this. The second thing that was very important was that to involve colleagues. They were absolutely uncertain. They didn't know whether they might get affected or not, and we introduced measures quite fast to protect our staff members. I think these two aspects those moments were the most important moments where we had to keep our nerve and continue working. Well, you had to hope that you would continue and that at some point you would get some support. Yes, that is true. But I have never used the word hope as much as I used back then and I'm using now. Well, we heard that the second support is smaller. How about you, Mr. Henkel? The numbers were dropping a lot. In your sector, what's the development now? Yes, I think that last year and also in the current situation of the first half of 2021, we have lost about 30% of passengers. And based on surveys that you can read everywhere, people are thinking about changing their mobility on a long-term basis. And I think it is important that we see this as an opportunity, that we think about how to make it more attractive to people that we had so far, that is commuters, for example, and how we could take new groups of people with us as well, people that we had not addressed so far. This can be an opportunity that we think about using this changed mobility behavior. For example, by talking or by rethinking school starting times with the districts. It is always the same thing, that buses are crowded between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning and afterwards they're empty. So that is something that could be tackled. I think we also have to learn from the pandemic that we need to improve our ticket models, that we need flexible models. We need job tickets as a basis, and we need more flexible subscription models and to give them different offers. But what we also need to regain our passengers is the reliability, punctuality. We need to be fast. We need to be reliable. I know this sounds boring, but this is exactly what we need compared to individual motorized traffic. that increased massively, because if we want to be successful, we have to provide these advantages to compared to motorized individual traffic. From my point of view, we need a positive story that local public transport is safe, that we can use local public transport, that there is not an increased risk of getting infected. And I think all the surveys that we made also abroad showed that when we meet the regulations, that we are safe traveling. I think we also have to make sure that we don't go back to the absolutely packed trains where it was really crowded, where there was no comfort at all. And this is why this project is also an opportunity to constantly renew the offer that we have. We need bigger trains, basically longer trains, longer stations, better offers. And then we can provide the passengers with what we want, good quality and comfort and safety in using an environmentally friendly rail system. This sounds really great. I would like to present Mr. Heinemann with a horror scenario. Sorry, I'm not wanting this for you, but in late May, you're starting with a cross-border project. This would not be the first time that the numbers were rising and the borders would close again. What does this mean for a rail project? Well, first of all, we have to make sure that we get through the next few months in a good way, and then at some point, and that buses and trains will get, that more people will use buses and trains again. What I wanted to say, what I learned from the crisis is that it is so important to think of your staff members in a crisis like this, to give them as much security and safety as you can. And the second thing is that if the sector is to work, I have never seen so much unity in this sector as I saw during the last 14 months. So much cooperation. We did not fight a lot. We concluded a good pact. We decided what we wanted to do. We decided on the timetables to hold up everything, the operations, because we're critical infrastructure. And on the other hand, we will provide the numbers and decide on a support measure that will be provided by the federal government. And I'm glad that this worked out well. And I'm glad that the losses are compensated entirely. And the second thing is we need to work for the time. We need to prepare for the time after the pandemic, because there will be a certain effect that is due to the fact that people got used. A negative effect that is due to the fact that people got used to work in a different way, for example, from home. And we need to see already, we need to think about what we can do from 2022 on, when people, or to make sure that we are part of a growth market again, providing different tickets. The tickets that people bought because they knew they had to go to the office every day of the week, maybe this will not exist anymore. Maybe people can share subscriptions. This would be interesting to have a sharing model. And we need to evolve these new concepts, these new strategies. We do not only have to emerge from the pandemic, but also from the time after the pandemic.
Yes, that's a very important point that you just mentioned there. Of course, the pandemic has changed people's lives fundamentally, and that has an impact on the rails. So we've heard about innovative concepts here. What about innovation in rail technology? Do we need to focus on design in the next years? Do we need to imagine a whole new design system after Corona? Will people want to have a different rail experience? Yeah, we can also see that we have a role to play here after Corona for more safety and for more comfort. There's been a lot of thought. So should we need longer carriages, longer platforms. There's been lots of different other considerations and programs how we can support this development. So automation, more trains on the same route. We've been looking at ATO. And of course, there's an overall concept that we need to devise. Both the platforms, the stations, and the trains need to be looked at. As you just said, if you've got all of the students or the school pupils in the trains from 7 to, or the buses from 7 to 8, then things are the buses are empty afterwards. And the same thing applies for trains. So we need to make sure that there is space for passengers. Of course, so we're going to have to look at managing passengers. So, for example, we have to look at how full are the carriages. We're going to look we might have to have a kind of traffic light system where we can point out that here is less full or here is a busy place for our passengers. So yes, design, as you said, we need to have contactless entrance to trains. We need aircon, for example. That's something we've been looking at. And there's a lot of new concepts for aircon, for new developments and for retrofitting, so to make sure that we have safer, healthier trains. So then I must ask, do you or representatives of the rail companies, do you conduct surveys amongst customers to ask them what do you actually want? What kind of design would encourage you to get back on trains? Yes, Ms. Henkel, you're nodding. Yes, I think the colleagues do indeed do that in the train, Deutsche Bahn, our colleagues in Bavaria. Can you give me some concrete examples? What have you done so far? Have there been any experiences with this kind of work, Mr. Poffeler? Well, we have regular surveys. So not just because of Corona, but because of the time period before that, we wanted to make long-distance trains more family-friendly. Families want to travel. They often travel as a family by car. And so to make trains more attractive was crucial to us. So we want to make it easier for families to travel with their children and to change the interior design. So we've had suggestions. We've had model trains that have created services adapted to those people. Also, as Mr. Heinemann said, we're going to have a shift in the way we travel and our travel behavior. As we've heard the question of tickets, we're definitely going to have to think about that issue. But yes, the interior design of trains is also going to be affected, and it's a future issue. We're going to have to look at that with the stakeholders, with the railway companies, and we're going to have to combine all our findings. It's not just because of the sake of competition, but we're all interested in this goal of shifting transport from the road to the rail. And I believe that there's certainly room for improvement in terms of creativity. So I'm going to come back to that point. Now, Mr. Burkhardt, I would also like to hear from you. Do you have any what experiences did you have during the pandemic, or are still having? Of course, yes, we are all working on the vaccine program. Mr. Wortmann has said, Mr. Heinemann said, there are a lot of challenges during the pandemic. What are we learning then for the future in order to make the rails as an employee attractive? Well, staff in all railways have done an amazing job. The trains in regional transport have been working at 100%, 85 in regional and long-distance transport. Yes, trains were, in the start of the pandemic, a lot more empty, but the safety of the staff in the train was guaranteed the whole time. For example, if people didn't wear their masks, yes, there's been a lot of assault as well. And that's why it's great that the federal police are in the train stations in order to provide support, and they're also stepping onto the trains to make sure that controllers themselves don't have to enforce the hygiene rules. But the staff have they've shown a lot of solidarity. There's been a collective bargaining agreement that was concluded. So the staff have certainly played their part in overcoming the challenges. And I would like to thank, as chair of the Pro-Rail Alliance, I'd like to thank for the rescue packages, the Parliamentary State Secretary Henrik Velleman also touched on this topic. So I would like to thank to the Parliament, give my thanks to the Parliament and to the committees, because there are local transport companies. I won't go into great detail, but they were looking at only 10 to 20% of passengers. So the problem for them was absolutely enormous, and the rescue packages were an enormous help. Yes, of course, the rails are an ongoing cost. Just to put it quite bluntly, or to ask bluntly, the rescue package, is it filling the gap so that we can now focus on Europatact, the synchronized European timetabling, and TEE 2.0, or are there a few more problem areas? Yes. I would just also like to also express my thanks for these rescue packages. They are filling the gaps in Bavaria. Unfortunately, only 90%, however, over the last year. But we need to look now at how mobility behavior changes after Corona. We need to play our own role here. We need to work in cooperation with the associations and the Bundesländer. We need to get people back onto public transport and gain trust and acceptance. It was great that the Charité Hospital also stated that the public transport is safe. I very much hope that the subsequent effects of Corona don't last all too long. And as Mr. Heinemann said, we're going to have to look at what is the development of our home office, for example, in future, and how will people's travel behavior change. We may have some gaps that need to be filled for a longer time, but I am confident that if we really are committed towards climate change mitigation, then people are going to have to get out of the cars and get on board our trains. And I think eventually we're going to need more capacity. But unfortunately, I think we'll feel the impacts of the pandemic for a long time. Yes, we've also seen studies over the past years that the health crisis is also heightening people's perception and understanding of the climate crisis. The two things are going hand in hand there. One, the fact that people might get infected on long-distance journeys, for example, in intercontinental flights. But at the same time, we're seeing that shorter journeys, domestically or in Europe, are more pleasant, and perhaps people are more inclined to travel with the train. Mr. Pofler, how do you see that? Yes, just a few weeks ago, we launched a joint paper with the aviation sector, and we had the goal just to talk about domestic aviation. We want in the next years to bring about targeted measures to reduce, to make 1/6 of flights domestically redundant, so that people instead would choose to travel by rail, that they would use our system instead of flying. When you look at the public, for example, you see this contradiction. I think that you mentioned this, Mr. Heinemann, in another context. The pandemic has led to behavior where the different modes of transport aren't actually what's so crucial. People are seeing that the aviation and the rail sector are going to have to address and want this shift, this mobility shift. And that wouldn't have been possible 5 or 6 years ago, because we had a different kind of competition. So everyone admits and concedes we must change. And that's why I'm so glad to see the developments in passenger transport. Of course, we need to be creative. We need to be optimistic. We need to provide services and innovations. If you just think back to 2008 financial crisis, we were very, very pessimistic. We imagined that there would be no freight transport in future, there'd be no passenger transport in future, or that would be drastically worse than ever thought of. And I think we recovered very well. So we're in a good position. In our system, we have the highest share of electric drive. 90% of our transport, both for passenger transport and freight transport, are electrified. So in our system, also, if you look at the share of renewable energy sources, then by the end of this year, over all forms of transport, we're going to have a share of 62%. And we have every intention to accelerate that and advance that. So customers are starting to think about how can they travel in the most climate neutral way, and they will then choose our system. They will go for trains, because there's no other form of transport that is comparatively climate friendly and enables people to travel from A to B in a climate-friendly way, as well as a trail. And I'm sure that we're going to see that both for passenger and freight transport after the pandemic. And more the problem will be that do we have the capacity to respond to that? Mr. Heinemann, would you like to add to that? Yes, I agree with Mr. Pofler essentially. I think that, we have a lot to be optimistic about, but two critical points from me. We need this revival button, so to speak, a rapid revival from autumn onwards. Yes, the rescue package has been very good, but the next government is going to have to look at that. So there's two components that are relevant here. How much money is available for ordering transport services? I think too little. We're seeing that in the rescue package, but also in other issues. And then to go back to what I said at the start, the infrastructure, rail infrastructure needs entire new financing. I think in the 21st century, it is no longer up to the task. And it's very, very difficult to earn money. This rail infrastructure, to achieve what we actually plan to do, has a crucial role in making sure that people are able to move A to B. And therefore, we need to invest in it. We need to subsidize it. Perhaps move money from the road building sector. Yes, you've just initiated an interesting debate, Ms. Henkel. I think you want to say something. Well, once Mr. Heinemann has found that funding button, I'll certainly press it with him in autumn. Yes, we've all spoken about the rescue package. It was there to make up for the loss of profits from tickets. But we need to keep our prices stable in order to convince people. So that's why we need to talk to people who aren't represented here. Municipal authorities, the regional authorities who are financing these options. And they've said in summer, we'll be able to get people back on board and convince them of the system by bringing people from Berlin to the Baltic Sea. People want to get on the trains. The trains are quickly booked out, and we need to think about how we can get more bicycles, for example, more bicycle spaces, more bicycles on board our trains. And we need to start thinking about that now. We need to start planning for what's going to be after autumn. So I think, based on these positive messages that we're getting, we can successively build on that, and we can achieve, and we must continue that that project of common funding. As I think Mr. Heinemann said, yes, we need to be fingers on buzzers when we in autumn, when we're ready for the next stage. But I think we'll be able to carry a lot of people when we're able to travel again for weekends and for shorter holidays away. And I think people will enjoy traveling domestically around Germany. Mr. Pofler. Yes, I'm afraid I must, from my perspective, contradict that. What Mr. Heinemann said sounds very good, but it would have fatal consequences. And I must point this out. In the financing agreement that Elak Förlemann mentioned just now, we spoke about a time period of 10 years of billions, and it's the largest amount that any government has ever provided for maintaining the available infrastructure at the moment. If we question profit orientation of an organization, that of all those billions that are available, that money comes from the Network AG, the network working group, and there's no federal government after a pandemic that will sign up to that. When they look at their finances and think about where there's going to be shortenings of budgets in future, then there's no way that we're going to have measures replaced. So if you look at countries across Europe that have this funding solution that Mr. Heinemann is calling for, then they have the worst equipped infrastructure across Europe. Their infrastructure is in parts disastrous, is absolutely not functioning. So yes, we can talk about different aspects of financing. One model that I believe is good because it strikes a good balance between the different stakeholders is the Swiss model. In the Switzerland finances through toll from roads and provides that to the rail. So that's something that we might be able to talk about. But I would certainly warn strongly removing away from profit-based orientation of our nails. I can say there are enough countries in Europe where that did not work out well.
Uns hier nicht festbeißen, weil man
Okay, we do not want to continue with this topic, but I was told that funding would be a hot topic being discussed today and something that should probably get its own conference. But I would also like to give the floor to Mr. Heinemann at this point. However, maybe you can, this will fit in. You can wish for something. You can make wishes, or you can demand something from policy. Well, what I would like to have is that a family consisting of 4 will take the train in the future, going to Munich, for example, because it's cheaper than going by car. And if one of the best cost topics is the the infrastructure charges, so if we reduce them, the track access charges, then the railway will become cheaper. Mr. Rodenbeck, from a point of view of train technology, you can make one wish. What would that be? Oh, one wish. Okay. Maybe I can make one big heading. I think we have to stick to the ambitious targets that were already phrased before that. And this includes many different steps. Funding was mentioned before, and it would have to be planned or included in the planning on future budgets. And to achieve the equipment target for the future, I have to invest already. Also, when it comes to the timetable for the next legislative period, we have to see how the whole system, the whole rail system, has to be organized properly so that passengers can actually enjoy cross-border transport. The last wish I would like to make from an industry point of view was that we would like to have more planning security, especially if you consider all these challenges ahead. We need so many more staff members, hundreds of thousands, that we would like to train, all different kinds of technical engineers, signal technology engineers. We need to train them and get them to that point over many years to do their tasks, to do their responsibility. This is why we need planning security. Well, one wish that you made was as expert personnel that we will tackle later in the afternoon. Ms. Henkel, you also can make a wish now. Well, what is very special today is that we do not have a winners a winners pyramid or something here, because we are all winners. And I think that we have to get started, or that we have to run a marathon to stay in the world in the world of sports, that we have to run this marathon, that we will continue running this marathon together, that we will plan together, we will coordinate, we will learn our lessons, we will have difficult times, and we will make mistakes. And I think it is important to be transparent and to look at these mistakes and to get better. So we work, make mistakes at the same time, look at them and get better. So this means that we will be able to standardize solutions and learn more about technology. And I think this is what is very important. If we work together, as we did with the rescue package, then we should this way be able to deal with the marathon package. What would you say, Mr. Burkhardt? Marathon rescue package? Well, to achieve the climate change targets, the railway has to be the #1 priority in the Federal Republic. My wish would be that the staff members in the tender processes, that there will be more security when it comes to tender processes, that we can somehow deal with that. And from the European perspective, my wish would be that the mobility strategy would not be the change of the transport mode, but also that we give priority to other projects such as freight transport. Then we need a digital and automatic central buffer coupling. This is such a big project in Europe, but it is important that the railway system has to be the transport mode #1 in Europe and Germany to achieve the targets, the climate change targets. Mr. Pofalla, yes, my wish would be that that in the after pandemic time, policymakers will have the strength to continue with the investment that they expanded during the last 4 years in a really phenomenal way, that they will not take them back. And I really hope that I think that the investment will even have to be increased, because otherwise the capacity needed for what was just mentioned will not be possible. So we can shift from road to rail from a capacity point of view. Mr. Wortmann, then you have the last wish to make. Well, my wish would also be that we continue working on this all together, and it is not a short run, it is rather a marathon, and a legislative term is very short for this. If you keep going, it means that we now have to make sure that we work on things that will not have an effect while we are active, professionally speaking. This also means that from a political point of view, policymakers have to keep going. We have to invest in infrastructure projects. We need a better public participation. But I am against that citizens can, in the end, vote on these processes. I think, in the end, parliamentary bodies have to vote on this. I remember Ivo Gönner, my former boss, he said, when I started planning a road process, he said, do the public participation that you want, but do not give citizens the impression that they can actually vote on this project. Voting is done by the city council of the city of Ulm, and I think we have to bring action to the bodies, and we also have to make sure that that we have the constitution, because we will not be successful in the beginning. We have to keep going, keep investing, keep working until we will be successful, and we all have to understand that local public transport and rail transport will be more expensive in 2022 and 2023. So we need to fund to increase efficiency, and we will provide numbers to get this on track. I am really interested to see what will happen in the future, but we can provide policymakers with numbers to show them what we need in 2030, because then it will be more expensive to get the transformation going. Well, thank you very much, everybody. It is 12 o'clock. No, it is 1 o'clock It is 1 o'clock here in Berlin, and that means that we are going to take a lunch break now. Everybody who registered for the workshops at 2 o'clock, I will see you back at 2 o'clock for the workshops and 3 o'clock for the live stream. See you then. Have a good break.